Everyone, we wanted to take a quick moment to thank all the listeners, the viewers, and of course the patrons out there. The team here at Vector Sigma hopes that we can bring a little levity and a distraction from the weight of the real world. Time is always precious, but that has become even more obvious now. We want to say that we really do appreciate everyone out there that's spending their time with us. Welcome back, everyone, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined by the freshly showered Scott of VectorSigma.info. Everybody out there watching, listening to this, don't ask how I know, but I know. But yeah, Scott, we wanted to try and get you on video because we caught the rare shiny Scott Landis on a recent recording with the reigning world champion. Dan Arnold was hosting us on Verse Chats recently. So go ahead.
I could have been here now, but alas, Discord is not.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm hoping that it's not just going to implode on us. So, we'll see. I'm crossing my fingers, but let's get into it because we have a variety of topics of different subjects as well as varying weight. I'll put it. And the heaviest one we're going to get out of the way in the beginning. And this is an announcement that came, like 45 minutes ago.
Probably not unintentionally that it came so close to us doing a podcast.
Ooh, maybe. I'd like to believe we're that important. But so for anybody who's listening to this as opposed to watching it, the official Transformers TCG accounts put out the following message, and I'm reading this off of the tweet that they put out today on March 26th. In a world that's anything but normal, we hope to maintain some normalcy around our games and the community that is so important to so many of us right now. With that in mind, we're changing the global release date of Titan Masters Attack to May 29th, and there is a link to a longer Facebook post about it with similar information, but this is the main thrust. And I'm sure you're of the same opinion, Scott, but we've seen it in so many other places for so many other things that are obviously significantly more important than, the card game we all love. But we saw Magic as well make an announcement recently. Even without this announcement being made, it felt to me very much waiting for the other shoe to drop. As much as I try and avoid bringing real life things into the Transformers TCG simply because I do want to I've said it before, I want to give people a break from things. Real life can get very serious. Right. The fact of the matter is that this kind of had to be done, and based on the responses I saw, at least on Twitter, everybody's kind of in the same boat. Of course, nobody's happy that this is going to happen, or that it is happening. It's just the reality is you need to take care of your employees. You need to take care of all of the ancillary related industries. Getting the cards to people, getting into the card stores. Oh yeah, the people who buy the cards. If it's the responsible thing to do. I applaud Wizards for making a very difficult decision. Like I said, I kind of expected this to come down because we have seen the team, they're always looking out for people's best interests, this included.
Yeah, it wasn't. It slowly became unexpected to me. I mean, so the first shoe to drop was the Diamond Distribution, which is a comic book and gaming distributor. Right. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It said that they were going to stop their warehousing, which I think honestly in our area is probably where a lot of them go, because I forget the name of their card distribution, but I recognize the name of it, and that was where I know that a lot of people go to get their cards. So from there, because if you go to the WotC site, you look up distributors, they're one of the main ones that's on there. So after that went down, I was pretty sure that this all was inevitable.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the good thing is the main issue that I think was going on is that there was an uncertainty around, like, so this set's unique because we have like we have a buy a box promo, we have an insert promo and all this other stuff. So it was like kind of like, well, how am I? And there's like release day events, so it's like promos. So it's like, well, how is all this stuff going to go down? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of logistical questions on that end very quickly.
Yeah. So given that, I think that's probably why this was just the easiest. Well, it's definitely the right decision, but it also answers a lot of those outstanding concerns as well, which I'm happy about, because then there's not a lot of stuff like hanging out there in terms of all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. I'm sure there were more creative solutions to try and check some of those boxes, but at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, we all love this game. We all, well, maybe not all, Dan being the exception, we all love Transformers. Most of us love Transformers. There are things that will supersede it, and I appreciate that Wizards is taking those, or the whole team. I'm not sure who ultimately makes this sort of decision or how high it goes. Does it involve Hasbro? Does it, you know, who officially signs off and says, yeah, this is getting to this point? Whoever assisted in those decisions, you have my appreciation, I guess my thanks, because you are considering all the other factors in this, and at the end of the day, it's a serious issue for a lot of people. We're still going to get the set. There's still, you know, we have something still to look forward to. They didn't cancel anything, so I see somebody in chat saying there's some somewhat ignorant responses to this, and I hope people take a step back. I'm sure people were upset initially. Nobody's happy that it's getting delayed, but kind of needed to be done. Let's face it.
Yeah, those same people are not the ones that move the dial. So
yeah, don't get bogged down by those if you see them.
I'm sure there are 15 packs to buy.
Yeah, exactly.
Still what's going on.
Exactly. I mean, anything else you want to add on this, Scott? I mean, I think we're going to end up going in circles. It's very matter of fact. We know what the next stage is, or the next point in time that we can look forward to, and this is the new reality.
Yeah, should be fine.
So everybody out there, again, don't be disappointed. We will obviously be getting the set. We'll get more news from Wizards. It's the best thing at the end of the day. So we'll leave it at that. So we'll move on from there and then actually talk about some of the cards that we can be looking forward to at the end of May. Now, we got a lot of interesting stuff, but quantity-wise, it hasn't been as heavy as we've seen in previous weeks. So Scott and I had discussed offline talking about I'm calling them the star stratagems, all the ones that give you extra stars at the end of the show. But we're going to go through everything else first and then tie the obvious ones to that subject towards the end. So we're going to lead off with Overrule. Overrule's a Black Pip single Black Pip secret action. I don't know why that sentence was difficult to get out. When it's revealed when your opponent plays a white Pip action card, you scrap that action and it has no effect. I guess we're going to get one of these for every Pip color? Question mark?
I guess so. I can't see this one ever seen play.
So if we hadn't already seen Speed Trap, I could say this has a home as anti-combo just for the purpose of strictly dealing with equipment enthusiast, and given that we already had counter espionage, if you needed to diversify what you had, I don't know. I don't see any other reason to play this.
No, not with any greens in it.
It's here. I guess the only question is, do you think we're going to get a green and black Pip one? Probably not this set, but like, I guess we'll get them eventually.
I guess so. I mean, like, they don't. I think overall, I think the power level of these cards, you know, having seen two of them already, you know, that we have two of them available to play, I should say, already.
Yeah.
They're not that powerful. Like, I really feel like if you would have put a green and XYZ Pip on them, that probably would have been fine and actually do what I think the cards were intended to do, which is kind of diversify like your single color decks and things like that.
Yeah. They definitely need another effect, or maybe not definitely need another effect, but as an alternative to more pips or hitting more pips, as in like, so it's not you're on a wing and a prayer for them to play a white pip. It would be white or blue, and then something else. I would like to see maybe you nail a specific pip, but then if it has a whiff effect, if that makes sense. Like if they don't play it, you draw a card or something. I don't know. Or a dual purpose that's useful but not overpowering, because otherwise these counter spells, which is really what they're intended to be, are just not getting there.
Yeah, I wonder if like I wonder like if there was. I mean, because at Origin, like at Gen Con, basically, like we ran Infiltrate. Like I know I ran Infiltrate in my board and things like that, and like still brought it in occasionally, but I don't think it's had the universal acceptance and use. But I do think, unfortunately, it has. If you look at a lot of deck lists, I'm sure it looks like it's showing up in a lot of places, but is it actually doing anything? Probably not. Yeah,
that's the thing. The scenarios where you can really set up a gotcha scenario and lock your opponent into a specific play are few and far between, and even then or even if you play it and it's a quote-unquote guarantee you're going to nail something, it's still the cost of you trading your action step for theirs doesn't seem to get you ahead enough. I don't know.
Right. I mean, like, so a card like Hidden Fortification is basically just doing like
it blanks their supercharge. Yeah,
yeah, right. I mean, like you're just countering whatever the best ability they can pretty much play is.
Right. As well as having usage. So, like against a blue deck, like Hidden Fortifications isn't great, but it's not dead.
Right. No, it's even better there a lot of times, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but
at times, yeah.
Well, yeah, there are certain scenarios where you get where I'm going with it.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I think these. I guess the thing is that, and they've said it many times before, that these are feel bad sort of things. Counter spells in other games, specifically Magic, we're talking about, have this long history of baggage and negative connotations to it. So I understand the compulsion to tread lightly, but yeah, I think we're past that point now.
Yeah. I don't think any of these will ever see play in their way that they're currently constructed, unless they either change them, like you said, add a green or give them some downside protection. I just don't see how these will ever see play.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of words for overrule, which is not probably.
Well, we took it into a general direction, which I like.
Well, yes, that makes it a more interesting discussion than just this card's bad. All right, let's move on.
Right.
So let's talk about the other battle card that we got, and that's Supporting Fire. Now, through the grapevine, it sounds like there are a lot of hot takes about this thing. So we'll get into it. It's a blank pip action. One of your characters gets +1 attack until end of turn. It can attack untapped characters this turn as though they were tapped. Is this exciting you, Scott? I mean, it is a unique power, we'll call it. I didn't want to say ability, but I guess same difference.
It's really hard to say. So obviously we have two characters in the game that can do this right now.
Yes.
And I've played both in tournament settings before, and what I can tell you is, with both Razorclaw and Bumblebee, the issue was always their starting power wasn't high enough unless you were actually able to buff them with an upgrade and an ability. So
right. Yeah, it's 4 and 3 respectively, so it took some effort to get them to be a threat.
So taking up one of those plays, but allowing it to be any character you want that can do it, is obviously and gives you +1 randomly, is a balancing factor.
Right.
I just think you're going to hit a point where you just have too many blanks, and I don't know that this is
and
necessarily...
there's enough that you want before this one.
Yeah, I think so, but I mean that may not be true. I mean, it's definitely a powerful ability. It's definitely a power on like on control and control matchups, like you can't like hide the character. But again, like all you're really doing is like you're how do I say it? Like it's allowing you to reverse who went first in certain situations. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, you kind of break serve, reverse tempo,
yeah,
something like that. I was actually thinking this would be more relevant for aggro mirrors, depending on what those aggro decks end up being. So you try and steal an attack somehow. Now, since we have airstrike patrol, and I'll get to that in the question I have for you in a second, which is kind of it follows the airstrike patrol, but between airstrike patrol prior to that, we'll say blaster or just deployers where not all of the targets are exposed. It could get complicated as to whether you can or even want to attack some of these characters. The untapped ones specifically. But the question I had for you is, do you feel that this sort of effect, like the world has passed it by almost, given where we're at? So that's why I was saying it follows from the airstrike patrol. I was in our Discord, we were talking about it, and I had an idea in mind of when this would be relevant so you could get it tailwind, but there are a lot of subquests that need to be completed for that bizarre scenario to happen. Like, it's actually very difficult to get at the character you want in that matchup with this effect. And similarly, control decks, it's like, okay, you can get it prime, say Galaxy Prime.
Yeah, sure.
Again, it's going to take some real hoop jumping to make that attack still matter. Do you feel the same way, or do you think that it's just we're missing something, or I'm missing something?
No, I feel the same way. Although in fairness, I mean, right now, like, the whole thrust sideboard strategy is basically trying to do the same thing to ensure that all your attacks are going in the quote correct direction.
Right.
So, like, it's definitely a powerful effect. I just think there's more efficient ways of doing it where it doesn't
like spending 8 or 9 stars and starting with it in play. Whatever thrust costs.
Yeah. I mean, the big issue here for me is that how many of them are you actually going to play? Mm-hmm. To like make sure that you can rely on this effect to match. Like you said, if it's like just an aggro matchup and you're like, oh, I'll just choose my target better, like, does that even matter? Like
well, it's more stealing an attack kind of thing. So like when we were playing Predacons way back in Wave 2, one of the advantages was, I'll flip Razor Claw, get in on somebody that hasn't attacked yet, hopefully take them out, and now it's however many Predacon dorks I have left versus X-1 on your side. I don't know if that swing is going to matter, because again, if it's airstrike mirror, you're probably going to have to punch prime or whatever guy they flipped, because that's the one they want you to go in on, sort of thing. Like, you need them to make a mistake, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's really good against Insecticons because you don't have to attack Shrapnel.
Right, that's exactly where I was originally thinking, but that, I mean, not that Insecticons doesn't exist anymore, but that sort of aggro deck is just not very prevalent at the moment. Maybe it'll make a resurgence with the next set, but I mean, this dodges if somebody tries to block with a head.
I guess.
I mean, if somebody's Titan Master blows up, they're sending in the head next, I assume, and then you can get around it to whatever guy they're trying to protect. I don't know. I'm reaching here.
I mean, there's certainly situations where I think, like, you shouldn't ever have a bad target. You're just not always going to be able to attack where you 100% want to. Mm-hmm. And having to spend a card to do that, I think, is not where you want to be, because, like, we're not spending a character to do it now. Yeah. So I think it's already been proven, given the fact that we could have been playing these effects, that, like, and I get that, like, obviously, like, a 10-star character in Legendary Beast spot, and then, like, even a 5-star character in Laser Claw, like, but that only requires one flip. Like, I know he's been, like, random token 5-drop in certain decks at times, but like
Yeah.
again, like you have to sculpt a pretty perfect hand in order for him to actually do anything of value. And
Right.
I just don't think that. I think sticking it on another character like doesn't really matter. I mean, like I guess if more characters were kind of like the way Fangry is, where like I have to be attacking somebody that's higher, like what higher or whatever. Like I have to be, like if there were situationally powerful characters that your opponent could nullify just by playing certain cards in their deck and attacking in a certain order, then I guess this might see a home in those situations. But how many of them exist? Like Barrage, like I have to attack a damage guy. Like
I mean, there's that, or you could. So if we operate under the assumption that aggressive builds are going to sort of consolidate, and by that I mean, given the Titan Master mechanic, the running theory at the moment is that there's potential for 3-wide aggro to re-exist, and aggro could get taller as opposed to being the wide structure that it has been so far in recent history. If they get taller, now you can say, oh well, my 10-drop that can get at your characters is not super rare Bumblebee. It's General Optimus. Well, he's 11, but or arbitrary larger Titan Master. Say this is in the inevitable Wrecker aggro deck or something like that. You may not have to your point earlier about having to really put in a lot of effort. Like you almost needed Grenade Launcher Reckless Charge to make Razor Claw do something valuable. You can take one of those cards out of the equation because specifically Reckless Charge. So you play this instead of Reckless Charge because the character you're playing it on already has that extra 4 attack by comparison. And then you just need a follow-up weapon. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think I could see where 3-wide aggro versus a wider aggro would want this, because then you probably can steal the attack. But like even in any other situation, I don't know that that's going to happen. So I guess maybe that's a use for it, just because that seems viable to me. Like like you said, like if you were sending like the Fangries or like the Sentinel Prowl, Sentinel Ironhides of the world, they should be able to take out a guy before they've attacked. But like, I mean, so I can see that situation, I guess. But again, I think you're down to a situation where it's like you have to play a bunch of these in order to try to make sure you get it. So I mean, I guess you could play that out of a sideboard for those situations,
right?
And then you need to. It's still blank, so.
It sort of feels like one of those cards that could be a crutch, as in, oh, well, I can just play this and get at that guy. But if you sequence your attacks and utilize burn cards like One Shall Stand or any of the 50,000 options we have available now, you'll end up in the same end state by doing that without having to go to this length. Right. But by the same token, maybe, I mean, it has Warpath on the art, but I was thinking Bludgeon, where you can, if you can find some way. I only just noticed as I was talking that he's all red, and then it looks like a little Autobot symbol, so I'm pretty sure. But you play it in a Bludgeon deck, and then you can, negative defense somebody out of combat. It happens to be somebody untapped. You play this, get in on them. We could sit here coming up with all kinds of scenarios where it comes up. It's just the current state of the meta, I feel, doesn't really lend itself well to this card, or this card doesn't lend itself well to the meta. I'm not sure how to phrase that one.
No, I totally agree. And I because I just don't think that we're at a point where it's like the same size decks are swinging at each other all the time, and it's
you need some way to break
the monotony. You want to make sure that you're actually making your attack versus a decent target, and I'm not sure that matters.
Right. I mean, it's certainly something to keep in mind going forward, though. Like, this card could be something relevant, especially as we're going to be turning everything on its head, given just Titan Masters in general, let alone all the other cards.
Do you mean the comment that someone has that this should be immediately banned was not correct?
Wait, what?
Hey, you're the one that says. Listen back to your the chat we had. you avoid the boards for a reason.
Oh yeah. Are you trying to like? I feel like I'm being justified. I'm being vindicated here.
Yes.
Because oh boy, that's a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on from that sentence. So those are the battle cards. In other news from today, we also received, well, Scott, it's a point in history that I never thought we'd hit. We have a mediocre Optimus. But first, we're going to talk about his head. We'll get to Optimus. I'm mostly joking. We'll get to him in a minute. So we'll start with Apex, who is the stealth head. He's 3 stars, 330, and he conveys stealth onto whoever he is attached to. He's melee in his bot mode. And I just realized I think this is the first one we got in this order where it was. These are stupid things I noticed because I build the overlays where it's bot mode on the left and head mode on the right instead of the other way.
You said this before on another one I was listening to.
Did I say that? Okay, so it's not the only one.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, so we have our stealth head. Scott, are you willing to invest 3 stars to give a Titan Master body stealth?
I think so, but the problem is, even though stealth has existed for like over a year now, I don't know that it's ever mattered outside of like the airstrike situation when you're like.
And to be fair, it was not very, but it was often very conditional. You know, like the Micromasters only have it when they're untapped. I think you can be more creative with this because say you have a Titan Master body with this guy and you have a Battle Master, it's get in with the Battle Master, get in with the Titan Master. They have to attack the Battle Master again. So if your third guy matters, they're getting that Battle Master. You know what I mean? Maybe that won't matter overall, but it gives you a little more play with those unique scenarios.
But can't you just? I mean, your Titan Master at this point will be the last person to get KO'd. Just slice it, right? Because it can never be attacked until it's the only, like, you're not,
unless you exposed him. Yeah, so like
which you wouldn't do, right? So I mean, like,
well, I guess if you're giving him stealth, yeah, you probably want to keep him alive. I would go out on a limb.
So I mean, like, you clearly are cutting a scenario. So like all the very important ones, this is a viable option because there's no chance of them ever being KO'd in combat. So, like, anybody that you're building your deck around, like whether it's Preceptor or Cup or, I guess to an extent, like Brainstorm or like, I would say Horrible, but I just feel like he needs the hit points too much for this to matter. But like,
well, I will get back to him because I did have a point for him. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but he's an example of somebody you build your deck around, and so at that point, like, isn't this just a viable option because they can't be attacked, right? I mean, like,
so it is or is not a viable option.
It is a viable option.
Is, yes,
okay. Very powerful. Right?
I thought I misheard you and thought you were saying isn't for a second. That's why I was confused. I think Horrible still is an option there because one of the concerns I have with Horrible based decks is that quite simply, if you go second, and it's like, all right, they tag him for a significant chunk of damage on one. And then, okay, you're going to get like 1 or 2 activations out of him. Is that going to be a concern?
Still the full.
Well, yes, but it's only saving 1 damage. So he has effective 10 health. Like, that's not a whole lot when he's going to be self-damaging. Especially if you're focusing the deck around getting his activations. So point is that if you have this head on him, they can't attack him. He has 10 health. He's going to always get, well, not always, but he's going to have 10 activations worth of health because he's going to be the last guy to die.
Right.
So the point is I think that's a reasonable scenario in addition to the other ones you were explaining.
Yeah, that's fine. I think any one of them that you, other than this one, because it's just too expensive.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that.
I think any of the other ones, it becomes a viable option.
Yeah.
Any of the ones that you want to like have your deck be based around.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think this is stealth. Like you said, up to this point, has not really come to the forefront explicitly. I mean, again, it's weird to say given Airstrike Patrol, but it's like all the other characters with stealth, nobody cares. So this has the potential to be very significant.
Because a lot of times stealth is built into the character's cost.
Right.
So like oh, it can't be attacked. So that means there's an issue with it. Like it's going to have lower power or something like that. But now that's all gone.
Right.
I also think this is also an interesting. I can't believe I'm going to say this. It's an interesting combination with Quake to allow his variability of being the only character on the field to get the 6 attack.
Wait, what?
In alt mode, he has that ability where if he's the last character on the field, he gets +2 attack. So this will allow him to be the last character on the field and get the +2 attack.
Wait, Quake does? The guy who pings everybody?
Yeah.
That's how much I paid attention to that ability. Like, I only remember them to ping everyone.
Tank. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll take your word on it. I can't find the card fast enough.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's terrible for Skull Smasher, because I think you want to put a defensive. A lot of the characters, I assume this is just as good as that, right? Why would you?
Oh, you dropped out for a second there. What is that?
Any character that you want to put a defensive head on, isn't this just as good? I mean, obviously you're dependent on the other characters in the deck, staying alive and holding down the fort per se, but if you're playing ahead to keep your guy around, I don't know how this doesn't become
the major one. I mean, I guess
the obvious option. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so I do have a joke, but it is also it's amusing to me that obviously the bot mode for the head has the keyword that it confers. But is stealth ever going to matter for this guy? Because either he's getting in right away or he's your last character. I guess one of the arguments could be is that if you assume Flintlock is your other head, Flintlock has the tough, his ability actually matters when he's the only guy on the board. I guess.
Yeah, I can't imagine where you're right. I can't imagine where that part of this is going to ever matter.
Right. I mean, he has 3 health, so hypothetically, since he's not going to, or not as likely to die out of combat, that maybe something happens. I'm sure there's a scenario I'm not thinking of because there's always something weird, but I agree with you, your original point that if you're looking for a defensive head mode to attach to your characters, this guy probably shot up to the top of your list. But here's the joke, Scott. Would you pay 4 stars with this so you could build your swap heads deck?
No, but I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are going to try that. I think you're just going to always be a turn short. Oh, if I had one more turn so I could swap heads, and it's yeah, you're just never going to.
Yeah. Or
it seems that way. Maybe it'll work out. I don't know. But any other thoughts for Apex?
No, it's interesting because I think it's pretty powerful. It seems like to me.
Yeah.
Personally.
It's weird that he reminds me of a cross between Wheelie and Orion Pax, but he does.
I don't know what this guy's background is or anything like that.
I know nothing about him, but he's very orange. Except for the head. The head reminds me of Orion Pax, but the body reminds me of Wheelie. But anyway, so we'll move on from there to the big man himself, Optimus Prime, Legendary Warrior, which I saw someone comment on Twitter. I think the grill in the truck mode is enormous. Like it is enormous. There's no segue from that. It just is. So we're going to talk about Optimus Prime. So he's a leader, as you'd expect. He's a truck. He's melee. He's 12 stars. He's a 5/16/2 in alt mode. And when you flip to that mode, you draw a card. Then if you have fewer cards in your hand than your opponent, draw another card. I'm getting the sense that maybe this was designed sometime around Shockwave. I don't know.
Yeah.
Over in body mode, He is ranged, he's a leader, he's a 6/16/1, and when this attacks, repair 1 damage from one of your characters. Then if you have fewer characters on the battlefield than your opponent, repair 1 more damage from that character. We'll get to his stratagem, which kind of ties into this in a moment, but yeah, I was mostly joking earlier about mediocre Optimus, but is this guy lighting your world on fire, Scott?
Light my world on fire is different than I think he's more viable than other people think he is.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, for the stat to start cost ratio, I mean, he's a little bit lacking from what we've come to know and expect from Optimus Prime variants in the defense department. But I mean, he has 16 health on a 12-star character. He doesn't get larger like Nemesis, but, you know, we're in that ballpark.
Yeah, but this is everything about him is priced into the stratagem.
Of course.
So I don't think any of that really matters, because I think it's all priced so that, like, everything you do comes together to one giant robot.
All different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, so I don't even think any of that stuff matters all that much, because, I mean, ultimately he's going to have some other ability from a head, probably some other ability from a stratagem, so I don't really care about any of that stuff. The thing about his alt mode doesn't really matter to me at all. Like, I think you'll just... I don't think you should build the deck around flipping him back and forth just to be able to draw more cards. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I mean, I think it'll come up... Yeah, you don't go out of your way, but I think it will come up in a fair number of matchups where it's like, yeah, I'll just draw 2. Because just by virtue of the way the game plays, you'll end up with less cards.
Yeah. So if we look at him on his own without the stratagem, which I don't think you should do, but we'll just look at it for argument's sake. He's a minimum cost of 13, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think the problem is when you cost that many stars, you have to do something that is game changing to where you're like playing extra abilities, upgrades in a turn, like the way a lot of the big guys are. Just draw an insane number of turns.
You do something unfair.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, rereading like the repair thing is not immaterial, and I think people need to understand that. Like, and as dumb as it sounds, putting a toolbox on him can allow you to heal for 4 damage a turn to any target, assuming that you have less.
Well, 4 damage in attack. So yes, you just have to be the only reason I clarify is, I can see the argument being, since you have to attack with him. I mean, let me take a step back. The way I'm looking at it is you're probably starting with, if you only heal him, you're starting with a quote-unquote free energy pack, so to speak, because you're probably going to get at least 2 swings in.
I mean, how many games have you played where the 2 giant bots just beat on each other for infinite amount of turns?
Well, but those aren't always the matchups you have. And so I'm just thinking in the abstract. I agree with you, don't get me wrong, where it's, it's 1,000 turns of people slinging fish. Like, they're not actually killing each other. So yeah, you end up coming out, maybe not ahead, but you definitely break the parity there.
See, I think you do come out ahead, even though you, especially when you factor in all the other factors.
Yeah. Well, you might come out ahead. It's just a matter of I can't, in my head, let alone on stream, figure out exactly where that breakpoint would be. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's a lot of turns, but how many is a lot? Is it 5?
Are you I'll do it in Excel.
Well, no, I'm saying I'm not asking you to. That was more. I mean, it's more rhetorical if you really want to do that right now.
I don't want to redo it right now, but I will do it. I mean,
we're going to have to figure out exactly where it is. But that's the question for me is every time everybody's tired of hearing it. Every time a healing card comes up and I talk about, I want a healing deck to work. Like it only matters with respect to, do you hit that break point? Because it's like you could heal 10, but if you're taking 20, it doesn't really matter, depending on the character. Obviously, I'm just making up numbers. It's going to matter whether you heal 1 more to get you into that next break point to increase the number of attacks. So if like somebody hits you for 30, it doesn't matter if you healed 6, you're just dead, is my point.
But if somebody's going to hit you for 30, it doesn't matter how much defense you have either and how much tough you have either.
Well,
so you might as well have no abilities at that point.
Right, but I'm just making up numbers for the sake of hyperbole, but the point is you need to, if the chunks of damage are 2 sets of 10s or 2 sets of 12s, let's say, so you negate the 2 blues you'd flip, that would kill this guy, are you going to heal enough so that you essentially get to 21 health so that they require a third attack or another card, if that makes sense?
I believe so, yes.
Right, and I'm not, again, that I'm just couching the discussion. I'm not disagreeing with that because I don't know. But I agree with you that, I mean, maybe Toolbox might be a bridge too far. To be honest, my first thing was like, all right, what heads and stuff could I do to get a mercenary and then try and actually make the theme of the build to you're going to out-sustain people because wherever they end up targeting things.
The fact that it's not, again, it's just like that battle card from last time with the 1 damage across the board and then the 2 damage across the board.
Yeah.
Because this also is separate instances. The toolbox thing is real because you're healing 4.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right because it does it in an independent packet or what I don't know if there is a term for it in this game yet. I hear you there. That makes sense.
Not to mention the combo with Safeguard. So I wouldn't go so far as put convex on this because then this guy's going to cost 18. But
that's that might be a bridge too far. Yeah.
But I mean, I guess hypothetically, I mean, it is. I actually think it's hypothetically possible that if your opponent, and I will never beat this opponent, but if your opponent isn't playing any direct damage in your deck, you could literally lock them out of the entire game with him and convex.
Yeah.
And a toolbox. And I don't think that we're talking about a green card, a head, and a character, and your opponent is completely they just scoop it up right there. Oh, I have no direct damage in my deck. Guess I just lose. That's it. Period.
Well, I guess it depends on what phase of the game. So would you be able to do that? Is the question. No, because then you would just get in with Optimus. I'm trying to work through the sequence. Is there any interval? Because they would have to be alternating damage. Because you get in with your Safeguard guy, they get in, trigger it. You get in with Optimus, heal it all off. They could
Safeguard again.
Well, or they could just punch Optimus.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not like I wouldn't even call it a soft lock, but it's approaching that. It's not like they're hard locked out of it. But yes, I get your point.
You can put that armor on that prevents direct damage also, and then you're even
there. It is. Ladies and gentlemen, we got it solved.
It's all green cards. I don't think it's that hard.
Yeah, I think it. I'm making jokes about it, but in my head, the pieces are falling into place.
I mean, again, clearly, that would actually negate it, but I mean, now you're in a scenario where your opponent has to be playing direct damage, which they should be anyway. But if they're not, if they are, then there's even a card out there to negate it. And then, so at that point, now you're I think you can still continue to make things really difficult for your opponent. I just don't know if you want to put, assuming you're going to play the stratagem also, I just don't know if you invest 17 stars into him. I mean, with 2 4-drops that do nothing, or any, a too tall, because, if you're too tall, then obviously the ability always goes off also. But if literally your character is a lock, and you want less characters in your deck because you want to be able to attack more often to continue the lock.
Yeah.
I think this is, so on the surface, there's that aspect. There's also the aspect that, he doesn't have to heal himself. So, you can always just be, against any 4Y deck, there's no chance that he's not going to always be getting 2 off as it is.
Yep.
So, if you think about him with the Galaxy Prime type partners of 2 5-drops, if he's the last attacker again, one of those guys is going to get healed for 2 because they very rarely get KO'd during the first go round anyway. And now you're just setting up a situation where it's even just more difficult for your opponent to do anything. I think the issue with him is a lot of people are going to compare him to Galaxy and things like that, and like the free plays that you get out of it. And I get that, but I think you have to be looking for like these lock opportunities and these like very powerful scenarios, like with Safeguard or with like Toolbox. Like, I mean, because there's going to be an inevitable point of the game. It's 1-on-1, and if you're healing 2 to 4 a turn, swinging with some kind of weapon where, like, yes, you're only a 6 instead of an 8, but you stick the typical weapons on him, you know, your Energon axes or whatever, or your Master Sword at this point, things like that. Like, I just think it's like healing 2 to 4 a turn is going to definitely be to your advantage. Like, I understand that Galaxy has like the ability to put multiple energy packs on you, and like, let's just take the absolute scenario, which I think I've done twice ever, which is like having all 3 energy packs on you, and you have 33 hit points. I think over the course of the game, you're going to approach those levels without ever having to actually play a card other than Toolbox. It's a green.
Right. I mean, you will end up without Toolbox because you hit those one-on-one scenarios. You're not going to have fewer, so you will only get the 2. But yeah, you're going to. I know you were saying 2 to 4. It's going to.
Yeah.
You will hit those scenarios. Is this where now Thrust is even more mainstream than it was before, just to enforce that?
It's an option, but I don't think you necessarily want to like leave. You don't want to leave him exposed all that often, because you just want to get more attacks, but it doesn't necessarily mean, in a sense, that you want to leave yourself more exposed.
Right. It's going to be interesting seeing how he shapes up, because I do agree that over the course of the game, the virtual energy pack effect, I'll be honest, one of the disappointing things for me is the 6 attack, which, yes, it isn't that much lower than 8, but you're investing a lot of stars, and that's clearly this because of him and the stratagem in the head that has to be there. He has to be doing the heavy lifting, and obviously the stratagem's going to help, but it's going to get tough because I'm calling back mentally to all the times that we played Jetfire and said, okay, well, Optimus just puts out slightly more damage, and that is relevant.
Yeah, but it's the same argument that was there, is that this guy, similar to Jetfire, I think probably defends better.
Right.
So
yeah, so they end up attacking, or maybe not attacking, but presenting different issues to the meta as a whole. There may be a niche for this guy.
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, because I really don't think it's hard to concoct scenarios where, like, you're still going to be a defensive deck. So, like, say you put, like, I don't think it matters much. Like, say you put the 2 hit point head on him, or the tough 1 hit on him, and so they attack, and, like, you know, you have armor or something or whatever, and you're blocking 4 and they're attacking for 8. Well, now their 8 just became 6 in the end, and you only took 2. Like, instead of taking 4, you took 2.
Yeah.
So, like, if this guy had printed 2 more defense, would everybody just think he was way better? Like, if he had 3 defense in bot mode, because that's basically what he has, right?
Well, I think that's exactly it, is that it's deceptively more defense or more whatever because of the Titan Master mechanic. It's not on the card. So yes, if you stop and think about it and go, oh yeah, well, I could just put this head on him, everybody's going to come to that conclusion, but it's not. It's hiding in plain sight, I guess.
Well, it's the healing, like, because you're repairing 2 a turn. It's essentially 2 more defense.
Right.
And, like, the thing about repair, like, is, like, obviously you can under repair instead of overkill, I guess you could say. Cool. Phrase or whatever, like, but in this scenario, when you have 16 to 18 starting health, depending on which head you're using, like, you're not gonna not repair yourself. Like, you're not gonna take that much damage in one turn. So, like, you're definitely gonna get the repair off. So, like, at that point, the argument becomes.
And it's never really going to be wasted because, well, I guess there are scenarios where you could waste it, like we were talking about earlier, but somebody's going to be damaged. Like,
Right.
by the time this guy gets to swing, you're going to do something. And again, it's going to come down to those break points, whether it's on him or the whoever the partners happen to be.
Yeah, I just think people aren't thinking outside the box with this as to how
the toolbox.
Yes, as to how good this really is.
Yeah, there's definitely potential here. That's why I wanted to lead off with the him being terrible joke. But we do continue the trend of, at least at this stage, we'll see how he shapes up. Of Optimus is constantly threatening the meta as a whole. We'll see. So let's move on to Duty and Honor, which is this particular Optimus's stratagem. So as long as one of your characters other than Optimus Prime Legendary Warrior has been KO'd this game, your Optimus Prime Legendary Warrior has Brave, Focus 1, Bold 1, and Tough 1. So you were talking about how you feel this is imperative to play with him, Scott. Can you tell us about why?
Oh, it's imperative, but it's clearly baked into his lower than expected stat line, put it that way.
Right.
I mean, you basically just become like you get all the abilities of the card itself, and you also get the Siege 1 Optimus abilities, also General Optimus.
Yeah.
So
that was the first thing that went through my head. It's like, yeah, you're General Optimus plus Brave.
Right. I don't think the Brave matters that much. Obviously, in a 3 on to save the other characters.
Right.
Which I guess you could just look at as a detriment. I don't.
That's actually what I was thinking. Is so he's 14 stars. Let's say 15 if you use a 1-star head. I guess you can, with the Brave, make sure your Flame Ward doesn't die on the wheel, or whatever your other support character is. It's just, I don't know. I don't picture those characters. Well, maybe protecting Brawn will matter, but he's probably going to be the guy that dies.
Not necessarily compared to like any of the other 5 drop. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah,
I think it's just like, I don't think it's going to matter much. Obviously, in a 2-tall deck, in a 3-wide deck, I don't think it's going to be that much of a negative. Like, you just basically, like you said, save the other character, which has relevance of obviously then providing the block the next time. So, like, it's obviously not irrelevant.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's basically like, are you willing to pay 2 more stars to give this guy Tough 1, Focus 1? And I think the answer is yes. Like, again, like if it was a 15-star character that said, we'll just assume Tough. So, well, you either have Tough 2 or you have 18 starting hit points, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
If you just inserted Tough 1, Bold 1, Focus 1 on the character card to begin with, because it's probably going to happen, like, does it matter? I mean, like, you can obviously concoct the scenarios through One Shall Stand, and Peace or Tyranny, and things like that to ensure that it happens.
Or the new Reckless charge.
Right.
How about that? There you
go. Or voluntary promotion, like whatever. Like, you can obviously concoct scenarios where, like, One Shall Stand's the obvious one, or the new One Shall Stand. We do one to KO your own guy, or like the other one, the blue-black card on your own guy to KO or something to draw 2 cards. Like,
oh yeah, the pep talk.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think, I guess it's worth it. I mean, like, you're basically getting insane abilities to start in play, as far as I'm concerned. Like, those abilities are going to go off, or you just lost anyway, right? Like, if he's not the last character remaining, you just lost, right?
In all likelihood, yeah. I mean, it adds a lot. I wonder. I think there's going to be more of a decision for me as to whether a 13-star version of this guy to fit in a 7-star and a 5-star is worth issuing the extra abilities.
I mean, as it stands now, it's hard to wrap my head around it, because we've said for the past few months, like, Octone isn't good enough because I can just play Galaxy, or I could just play Jetfire. So, like, if we're in that same world, which I don't necessarily think we're going to be in, then the argument is moot, right? Like, it's just the same character, no matter how you slice it.
Well, it's the question of whether this repair is better than his ping, which given the we'll call it the soft lock with safeguard, I think the cheapest safeguard character is 7. So you'd have to go that route if you wanted to do that. Whether that's the appropriate route is another story, as opposed to just trying to abuse Toolbox and the heal in general.
That's probably the way I'm going to lean, but not necessarily. I mean, like, the lore of a soft lock like that is tempting. And as I said offline, I really want to run it with Hot Rod, so every time Hot Rod is tapped, I can say, out of the way, Hot Rod.
Nice. Speaking of which, did you see, I retweeted this, have you seen all of the sound barrier memes? The new...
I don't get what that dude's obsession with sound barriers.
Because... what the hell is sound? I mean, I get it's a sound barrier, but like, look at that toy. It's like, okay, I mess with a lot of toys on stream. It's like, oh, you want him transformed? All right, I put him down. He's transformed. That's it. Like that. That's like I'm holding G1 crankcase. Oh, look, I stood him up. He transformed. That's like that's bad. It is. But did you see the recent GIF where he edited him into the Megatron Optimus fight scene? Yeah. That one was really funny. Like I actually. Okay, chat. That's a step too far. Sound barriers really into planking. Come on. What year is this?
I only saw where he was starting to run up the steps. Is there more to it than that?
Yeah. Because okay. Do you want me to spoil you?
I'm sure I know what happens.
Optimus clubs Megatron to death with sound barrier is what happens. And he wins. They're like, this is how the movie would have changed if sound barrier was there instead of Hot Rod.
Nice.
Anyway, sound barrier aside, sorry everybody out there for spoilers. I'm sure everyone's crushed. So anything else for the stratagem?
I think it just depends on if there's better partners to run this or not. I think the default is just to run it, to make him the better character. But, I mean, like, this is just, like, we don't have a stratagem like this where it's like, I make my best guy better. Like, I basically have him start and play with upgrades.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the character's going to get KO'd. Like, so.
The thing that makes, well, among several things, but one of the things that makes me leery about the stratagem as a whole is just that, I mean, yes, someone is going to get KO'd. It's probably not going to be Prime first. Is the point that they get KO'd too far gone in the game where it's, and I think this would be difficult for it to happen this way, don't get me wrong, but they KO whatever character, activate this, but Prime is already taken 10 damage. It's like, yes, the tough and the focus help defensively, but is it going to be enough to keep him alive, or is he just going to eat the same? Like, the tough then doesn't matter because there's going to be enough incoming damage that he's just going to croak. Obviously, it's a very complicated, or maybe not complicated for you, but complicated for me, calculation to figure out, okay, well, they're between the healing and the tough, and if you're a blue deck and all this other stuff, it's definitely one that I'm not going to throw away, the stratagem, that is.
It's not difficult because it either has to work or it doesn't. To me, it's binary, so it's like, if it doesn't work, you just don't play it.
Well, I mean, yes, but I mean, if I were to try and sit down now and figure out whether that works without trying it, is the point. I agree go ahead.
I think it has to, and I think it will. I think it basically what it comes down to is the extra built-in tough at that point in the game where you're also building up the rest of your defenses enough to matter, and then the focus to matter also. So
absolutely,
I have to assume the answer is yes. Versus if there's something just better to do with the other 2 stars.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting to me is that against the other big dude decks, bigger they are will always be on for this guy, even if you play the stratagem.
That's a good point.
Because he's only going to cost 13, even when you, quote, invest 15 into him.
That's a fair point. That's actually could be very relevant.
I did make a joke that I want to make my own. I want to put clobber stratagem. His stratagem, and I want to get him to 19, just to make him cost the same amount as the original Omega Supreme.
What?
I just want to see how fast. I just want to see how.
Okay.
What was my question?
Sure. Sure. You guys heard it here first.
Look, man, I'm home all day.
Yeah, you got a lot of time to think about it.
That's what happens.
I will admit that deck idea did not cross my mind. I will
just want to
say
see it. I just want to see how many effective stars.
that is a thing you could do.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on from there, and we're going to move into the last two stratagems. Autobot one first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the star stratagems as a whole. So, first one up is Heroic Spotlight. It is if you're starting. Oh, we actually didn't call out. That was his stratagem was the first 2-star one. All the other ones have been 1-star, but whatever.
We
I don't think anybody
during the conversation. But
I don't think anybody cares. So,
No.
Heroic Spotlight. If your starting team is only Autobots, your deck can have up to 2 extra stars of blue cards. So, I have rotating a number of blue cards that are star cards on screen, at least the ones we know at this stage, and you'll see them again later as we get to the other part of the discussion. But all of these stratagems bring something really unique because, I mean, we first saw it with the Blaster versus Soundwave deployers where we're really screwing with star counts, and they haven't stopped since then doing, unique ways to mess with it. I really like the potential for both this and the Decepticon one because a lot of these cards suddenly, the star cards, I mean, maybe shoot up in playability just because, okay, well, now it's not a singleton in the deck because I have this other spare star floating around.
Yep.
Were there any specific standouts for you, Scott, that jumped into mind when you saw this?
It's the secret action for the Autobot side.
The one where they stay at 1 health, Heroic Resolve?
Yeah, and then also, unfortunately, combo in nature with EMP Wave.
Yep, somebody had to say it.
So, but I think Heroic Resolve is the obvious one because it's unlike the Decepticon equivalent, which is just bad. Like Heroic Resolve,
the secret action, yeah.
And I said similar things. Well, we didn't actually say on the show because we didn't cover her because we don't tend to cover our own. Yeah, in case people don't know that, we don't cover our own reveals.
Yeah,
because we feel like we beat them to death. So we didn't cover Night Tracer, for example.
Shout out to Stefan.
Yeah, previewed her. So to me, her, and I guess we'll get to this, but her strat, it's similar to her.
Yes.
I wanted the 2 double blues, but that in a deck like that obviously requires Autobots, and she's a Decepticon. This is basically just the abilities just there. Bam, here's 2 Heroic Resolves if you're playing all Autobots.
Yep.
In a blue deck, because you have to play blue ones anyway. I also assume, again, we can just get Ultra Magnus for 13, right?
What is he? I'll be honest, I don't remember his star count initially.
He costs 12, the armor costs 2. So, you can just, if you play an all-Autobot team, get the armor for effectively 1 more, right? So, Ultra Magnus quote costs 13.
Yeah, I would think that would work.
Right. So that's my other use for it. If 13 cost Ultra Magnus is good versus 14, I think that's why. I think it's intentionally that way.
It's possible.
I don't I can't see myself putting in universal network accesses, or I don't see the. I mean,
would you reach for recon system?
No, I would just use. Well, I wouldn't use the heroic whatever terrible one from Siege 1 is. So I guess if I was going to play, I think I would just play Fuel, right?
Fuel Cache?
Play that? Yeah.
I mean, you could. That has come up for me in, for Fort Max kind of thing. I meant, do you envision, because I know in the past, a lot of people have been high on recon system in general for, just as an all-purpose card, but that's one of the ones that often comes to mind for me of, okay, I have 1 star, I can only get in 1. What the hell's the point? Do you think that this pushes it to that, past that?
No, because the only reason you're playing is because the pips help you in both situations, and because the chance of you actually drawing it are so minuscule.
Mhm.
Whereas we've already made the argument that this counteracts the downside of star cards to begin with by allowing you to have more than a deck.
Right.
I think I hadn't even thought about. You're right. Like I thought about the Omega Supreme example, but the Fortress Maximus are also you just get
any of the big guys, which admittedly are few and far between. That could, well, maybe not, but so Triptychon can use it, which we'll talk about in a little while. Omega, Fort Max, Metroplex cannot. You can't. Combiners wouldn't be able to leverage this.
But like Tidal Wave can.
Yes.
Or they're, well, I guess like Dreadwing always could. Like any of the like like Sky Shadow and them.
Yeah, Sky Shadow could find a way. Yeah.
Like any of the like quote like larger, but not take up your whole team combiners.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, this opens up a lot of possibilities, I think, and I.
But do you think you would? Do you think for either one of these you will force them into your deck to change? Do you think they're powerful enough to change?
So would you intentionally go to 24 stars just to get the two? Is what you're saying?
No, that wasn't my point. But that's also a question, I guess. But I guess what I meant was like, I can't think of an example, but like the easy example is like, let's just take like Barrage or Fangry, right? Like it's 7. They're clearly the best 7 drops, right? Like no doubt about it. Like they're the best 7 drops. Like if you're playing an aggro deck and you're like, I'm gonna play this worse. Like I'm gonna play Sentinel Prowl, who's clearly stat wise just worse than either one of those two.
Oh, to get the faction requirements, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I mean, so in an aggressive, that's the thing is, so on the Decepticon side, it wouldn't. I'm trying to think of a scenario where you'd have to make that decision. So if you're playing an Autobot deck and you had to make that specific one to get Prowl, you're probably an aggressive deck, so it ends up being weird. So I'm trying to think of an analog on the defensive side for it. Because if you jump right over to Villainous Spotlight, then, okay, well, I already have all the Decepticon guys, and clearly, oh yeah, I'm going to want 2 extra mounted missiles, or, whatever. I feel like there's going to be scenarios where, yes, there's got to be at least one deck that is going to say, yes, I will skip a guy wearing a purple badge to get access to this. I don't think it's necessarily going to be universal, but we are, due to just quantity of characters, I think we're filling in a lot of gaps where, to your point, Barrage and Fangry, Sentinel Prowl isn't, I mean, he's worse, but not like atrociously worse. You're going to be close enough in most of the scenarios. And again, this is weird because he would want oranges and this is a blue focus.
Yeah, it's just the example.
No, that makes sense. Chat saying possibly do it post board for some of these things to try and change stuff up.
It's too much of your board that you have to.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, because like for example, like the only replacement there is for Flame War is now also a Decepticon on the surface, or you just switch to like Brawn or characters like that. And like on paper, if your goal is to keep your big guy alive, Brawn's not as good there. It just offers another avenue of a viable attacking character. It's not a viable defensive, keep your big guy alive character.
Yeah, you'd very much be trading your consistent Flame War tough one for, hey, I might randomly flip more double blues. It's like,
right.
Okay, sure.
Right. So that's I think where this is going to come up a lot. Although I do think the deck defining parts of this card are, like you said, Fortress Maximus. Fortress Maximus and Omega Supreme basically just get an extra star card. That's literally all they do. They just get a 4th double blue in it.
Which is relevant for those guys, or in Fort Max's case, like to your point, Fuel Cache, which is exactly what I was thinking, just to try and more, or if we get I don't know offhand how many more battle cards we have, but if we get another triple pip like Master of Metallicato, that's a star card because it doesn't have as many tribal things on it or whatever. That's another way to try and get at it.
Yeah, I still think he needs the blues to stay alive, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how whether he can survive with these things or this, because it gives him access to the extra double blue. I think to your question about whether we want to skip stuff, I think because the key component support characters currently are Decepticons, we don't have any real analogs. It's going to be tougher for Heroic Spotlight to make that leap than Villainous Spotlight, I think, because I can more readily call to mind aggressive Decepticons that are good enough if I screw around with star costs than I can defensive Autobots doing the same.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that all the decks literally all the decks that exist now are obviously 25 starters.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them can't really substitute much in the way of anything as it is in the current. It has to be completely new decks. So then we're back to the question, the way you thought I was going to ask it, which is this worth it? And I guess that will segue into our entire...
Well, yeah, we'll definitely circle back to that. The only other piece I want to add, two parts. One is Titan Masters make things very variable, so those star costs could change. And the other piece is, and this kind of ties in, so going back to combo for a moment, if you are Springer, Fire Drive, 5-drop, this, because we were talking about this offline, it definitely seems enticing. You get extra EMP waves main deck or other cards that could help you. Problem is that now you're down to that problem of being only able to PTT realistically one character to get around the now at least 6 things. Now, granted, you have counter espionage is another answer. There's a bunch of dancing you can do to try and find ways around the new combo or threats to combo. But it may not be as simple because at the end of the day, it's kind of easy to just go, oh, I have Fire Drive on the board, I'll PTT him. I don't, I have Swoop or whatever, as opposed to, well, now I have Skydive or Brawn or whoever your 5-drop is and Springer. It's like, well, okay, I guess I'm screwed because I can't PTT out of that secret action that's there. You can make the argument.
Yeah, you would know better than me if it's worth it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I want to try for sure. Believe me, it's on the list, but it's one of those I'm not quite sure yet because I did have that when I was trying it with 12-7-5 as opposed to, whatever. Because there's an argument to just move all the EMP waves into the board and only rely on Wish's main. It's a larger discussion, but anyway.
Sure.
Anything else you want to highlight about Heroic Spotlight before we move on to the purple one?
I mean, I envision it being the better one, but that's because that's the type of player that I am.
See, I actually took the opposite tack just because the Decepticon one, I was very excited to try out Fangry as I'm working through preliminary deck lists, and then I'm like, well, this is easy. I'll just play 2 mounted missiles. Like, okay, get there. Now, there are some other unique things, like on screen, for instance, right now is pincer movement. I mean, it's a Decepticon card and it's orange, so I don't know.
If you're too cheap to not own all-out attack. So.
Yeah. You could play extra Relentless Invasion, which actually, that reminds me, I don't even know if Trypticon wants that particular star card over some of the other ones anymore. If Trypticon were ever going to be a thing, which that sentence itself is an oxymoron almost. You could play Even the Score.
I don't get that one. That one's so bad. I don't get it. Like, that one's like, it's so bad.
It's one of those, like, I don't know. I got nothing.
It's one of those that it had to cost it because it's too powerful an effect without it. But, like, in the end, it's another one. It suffers from the thing we talked about way back in the beginning of the show, which is like, it may not happen. It's similar to the counterspell thing we talked about earlier. Like, just it may not happen, so you just wasted your entire phase. And in this situation, wasted a star also. But again, you're right though. Like, getting extra copies of it can't hurt.
Yeah, it gives you. but still, it's 2, so you're not getting a full play set. You should see it more. It doesn't mean you're going to. It's not something reliable. You'd certainly be including it more for the double orange pip, but by the same coin, wouldn't you rather just have mounted missiles then?
I mean, this is after you've already. I'm talking about decks that may want to somehow get to 4 star cards. It's star card number 4. There's no mounted missiles is number 1.
Yeah,
I can't. I literally can't even see an argument where you would ever not include mounted missiles as 1 through 3.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, and it's. I mean, that's exactly why I maybe it's not. It was the wrong way to phrase it that this would be the better one, but it's certainly the more obvious one, I think, and maybe it'll end up being more prevalent because of that, just because it's like, all right, well, I have a spare star, I'm playing an aggressive deck, all right, stuff in 2 mounted missiles and this thing. Because again, I think you can substitute arbitrary or make the aggressive all Decepticon configuration more readily. Maybe that's not actually true, but in my brain, that's how it's working.
See, surprisingly, though, in both the major, well, I guess Insecticons can find a way to use this easier. No, not really. No, like in both the major Decepticon aggro decks, they're 25 stars. Like I mean, I guess, but Airstrike isn't, but it's because of autos. No Decepticon partner. There's no Decepticon partner. It doesn't allow you to get to 25 stars.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be some, as opposed to a thematic tribal one, that it would be some kind of hodgepodge with, again, Fangry plus stuff of, I'm just playing the guys that are, I'm playing good stuff.deck and including extra double pips, which it's hard to go wrong with that when you're playing orange, so.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you start to hit like 9, 10, or no, I'm sorry, 8, 9 doubles, like, you know.
And especially with, like, say, Fangry, where you have bold 16,000.
Or 2.
Well, he has 2, and then he's going to have a, you know,
3.
Like, he's going to have innate, and then that's before, presumably, you're going to play the superchargers.
No, you won't have 3. You won't have 3. Because the head will count as a character, so it won't work.
Do we know that for sure?
I'm 99% positive.
I mean, that's how I would interpret it. So you're correct. So he will only have the 2. You'll probably lean more bold base given the... I mean, it's going to depend on deck slots, of course, but I would expect you to be slightly more bold base simply because you'll have more double pips.
This is 100% why those heads the faction of it.
I would agree. Like, now that we're saying this out loud, I mean, I kind of assume that's how it would work anyway, where it's very much... It's kind of like how the deployers work. It's like, technically, you show your opponent your team, and then they start the game in under things or attached to things or whatever.
No, it says they start play in head mode, which means, like, you don't come to the table and, like, here's a head. You come to the table with the bot, and then they immediately, quote, flip to head mode. Right.
I think from a game, I don't want to say etiquette, but that's the word that's coming to mind, perspective, sort of informally it would be, or formally it would be, you present your starting team to prove that it's 25 stars, essentially.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Then you move everybody to where... So when the game begins, yes, they're in head mode, but you would... Because it says your starting team, they are part of your starting team, as you would, quote-unquote, present it, that's why I think they're going to end up counting. Or at least that's how I'm... Again, that may just be my brain telling me that's how it works, but I agree with you.
I'd be shocked if it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but we have been known to be wrong before, so it is possible.
Many times, yes.
So, I know we're kind of speeding through Villainous Spotlight, but we're really going to jump into the general star stratagem discussion, and there are a number of them outside of the 2 that we just discussed. So, we have Beachcomber coming up, we have the Night Racer one that you had mentioned before. There was Roadbusters. There may or may not, because I think we're still missing some stratagems, so there's the outside chance that there's a couple more lurking. these really seem to shake up, and in a good way, a lot of deck construction, or I'm expecting them to. But do you think they're really going to have that much of an impact, Scott?
I don't know, because I don't set out to make 24 star card decks. So I don't. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact whether they matter or not. I will say that in the case of the low cost characters that have stratagems for these, so I think that's specifically Beachcomber, Night Tracer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind turning them into a 6 or 7 drop. Like, it doesn't bother me that much.
By the same token, you could consider any 5, 6, 7 drop with the appropriate spotlight in the same vein, assuming there's something interchangeable. I would kind of agree with you right now. I'm not super enthusiastic about Roadbuster, even though he seems to. I mean, yeah, the spotlights are going to be more generic, but he seems restrictive on top of being. He's restrictive in multiple ways, I guess is how I'll put it. Both the cards that he enables you to use as well as the star cost. So it limits all of your options. Whereas these ones, to your point, if you assume that you're tacking these on to tiny characters, it's not that extensive of a cost to pay.
Right. And you can now use them together. The question for me is just like, which of them allow you to use, like, do the star cards matter? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think we've been very fair when we're evaluating cards in our multiple months of doing this now, not just for the set, but in general. Like, I think we've always said, like, we haven't really looked at the fact that a lot of things are star cards. Like, we just are trying to evaluate them on their own merit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure how many of them matter. Like, just based on being able to play them as cards. Like, obviously getting more double pips matters.
Yes.
And probably is the thing that matters the most. But, like, honestly, like, you can't, it's the one that probably sees the most play can't even be played in some of these.
Which card was that? You cut out for a bit.
In Leap of Faith can't even be played by, like, the Decepticon Autobot ones, and that's probably the best star card that sees play for its actual card text, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, you can make the argument that mounted missiles as a card, but I'm trying to think as I'm watching stuff scroll by. I mean, I still like Bolt of Lightning, but even when I have been able to use it, again, out of combo for a wish-based board, it's been challenging to engineer the scenarios. Now, that deck was not your typical build, so of course it made things weird, but yeah, I'm watching them on this rotation that I set up, and even as I was setting them up, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want a lot of these to begin with.
As actual cards, right?
Yes.
It's mostly just about the pips.
Yeah. Now, you do have unique scenarios, like the Soundwave one just went past. I'm curious, maybe not specifically for Soundwave, but deployers, and again, when we had mentioned Omega, Tidal Wave, all these other oddball teams, because it's often not just a single character, do these let you do more creative things with those extra stars outside of just, okay, I have more double pips?
I guess, like, Blaster could use Interpret the Air. I just took it out of a binder.
Yeah.
Interpret the Airwaves.
I mean, that means sacrificing Fire Drive. Yeah, so you have to...
do a 6-drop.
Which, there are feasible alternatives, don't get me wrong, but it is definitely a departure for what you would typically be doing. So you have to be very careful about it. I expect we're going to see... So outside of the, hey, everything's hot, fresh, and new, we're going to try everything out. I expect that we're going to see some of these moving forward. Like, I've said it many times before, but whenever these new mechanics, card types, whatever get introduced, some of the, and I'm putting what I'm calling the star stratagems in a different category than the remainder of the stratagems. one of these has to be good at the very least. Probably more than one.
But are they good because of the cards, or are they good because just good because, right? Like, I mean,
Good because of the pips, you said?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it... So again, the Villainous Spotlight one, I'm sure there will be a Decepticon-based aggro deck that utilizes that to get mounted missiles. And yes, it is primarily because of the pips, although that one is better than most star cards as a card. But I don't know if I get what you're saying. I don't know if the distinction is meaningful enough to matter. Like, I get I think it's going to breathe life into the fact that some of these other characters are +1 star, get 2 mounted missiles, +1 star, get 2 EMP waves, or, arbitrary double blue, energized field, whatever. And I think that's good enough to maybe
Heroic
push...
Resolve.
Yeah, that card. Yes, that's the better one. I couldn't think of the name.
Yeah.
Point being is, I think some of these other characters that have been riding the pine, sitting in binders for months, or would have if these didn't exist, are going to have life breathed into them. Obviously, I'm talking about the spotlights, not beachcombers, because obviously that's contingent on whether beachcomber matters. I mean, to be honest, let's talk about Night Racer for a second. So, like you said, we typically don't go over these because it would revealed by a team member. But do you care about the extra 2 secret actions?
I mean, if she's going to give tough one to my team, I care about having more double blues in my deck. So yes, I guess.
But are you willing to? So the double blue, it would have to be. I think the only double blue is Heroic Resolve, secret action, correct?
Yeah.
So she's 6. So you're doing, and not saying that this is going to be it, but Galaxy Prime, her, and Stratagem 4-drop.
Not in that scenario, no.
Right. I'm just pitching stuff to further the discussion. That's why.
I'm not going to do it in Jetfire either. But if you tell me, if you tell me that I'm a 13-drop with a different 6, like if I'm a 13-drop with 2 Flame Wars, like if I'm Shockwave and play her and a Stratagem. Well, that would be a bad scenario because you can't even use the Heroic Resolve. So
I mean, that's part of the problem. Yeah, you have to have it. And again, I think that's one of those interesting. Obviously, Wizards thought about these scenarios, and they're. I mean, shocker that they planned stuff out, right?
Yeah.
They thought of some of these scenarios, and I'm very curious how like that one would shape up because of that. There are other ones that are in a similar category. I really like the generic ones the most, the spotlights. I mean, I guess they're not generic.
I mean, Beachcomber is very generic. He lets you have one of each. So
I guess, yeah. I'll be honest, I haven't really thought a whole lot about Beachcomber.
It's more just about thinking about whether the star cards matter. Right? I get it. So I guess the point of all this is that we're in agreement that the star cards do not compared to the pips, right?
For the most part. I mean, it's hard to see. So, like, it just came across the screen, full loadout. I looked at it at points when we were building combo way back when.
Combo decks, right?
Yeah,
or like overwhelming advantage decks, right?
Well, I was actually looking at it for early editions or early versions of the Daring Escape deck because it's like, okay, well, I'll dump a whole bunch of upgrades for a single play.
Right.
Like as a new design's effect, especially when we were toying around with the wishable board and blah, blah, blah. We don't need to go into it, but the idea is, yes, I agree. Most of these are not worth it as actual played cards, which is interesting given that
they cost you stars.
Yeah, it's just, again, I get Wizards ratcheting things up and trying to not push the envelope too fast too early, but like I'm not excited to play Blast Suit now. No. If I can fit it in somehow, like I'm just not. I don't know.
No, I think that's so. I think and that's fine. Like I think it's interesting then that they continue to print handheld blaster and
Improvised shield.
Improvised shield when they seem infinitely more playable than the other options.
Yeah, it's I don't know. And I'm curious going forward. So outside the scope of this particular set, we're obviously going to get star cards down the line. Does this tell us anything about the power level for other star cards? I mean, I'm sure we'll get other good ones, but are they going to be very, very tepid with trying to push the power level on these as a result? Because now you don't have to go to, I mean, you still have to contort yourself to include them, but not nearly as badly as you did one set ago.
No, and specifically, you don't have to contort yourself to get, which is the key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we made the argument numerous times. Should have been green because you're investing part of your starting team, which normally starts the game in play, always is quote in your hand for a card that's randomly in your deck that you may not ever draw, and
right.
You, I guess. Well, you may not flip it during the combat that you actually want to flip it if it's the case of double.
Right.
Which is why, again, like your recon systems and your pincer moves and things like that are playable because they don't care what combat you're in. So, like, you're trading a lot of guarantees for a lot of not guarantees. And I think that's an issue. And even getting a second one in your deck now, yes, does that mathematically help you? Yes, but like I've ran the numbers. What happens if I have 9 double oranges in my deck? How does that compare to having 6? And when you go from 6 to 9, it's a big jump, especially when you start having bold numbers. But like, is going from 9 to like, there's a diminishing returns factor. Like, you know, I guess going from 9 to 11 is not going to be a bad thing. But like now you're talking about, you know, four unused stars in your deck, and like at some point it just becomes you're starting to depower your deck too much,
right?
Presumably, like I guess I can't just make that statement, but
right,
I think presumably you are. So
right,
I don't know. It's a long way of saying I don't know. Like I agree that like a lot of times if you were going to have one left over, it's going to be very easy to now jam in 2-star cards, and I think that might make a difference, but. Is now having 8 versus 6 matter? And again, the math will show that it does, especially because now, like we talked about this during when we talked about Fangry, but Fangry's not a good example for this because he won't actually have this head to let this proc. But like when we talked about Fangry, we said when you're flipping 5 cards, you know, once you get to 6, that's when you should be hitting your doubles in between 6 and 7. Well, same situation. So if you can get yourself a consistent bold 2 to 3 during every combat, you're going to start flipping a double all the time mathematically.
Right.
So you are going to hit a point where these really start to matter.
Yeah, I'm more enthused by the 2 spotlights that we already talked about a lot, but I really think those are both going to encompass the hodgepodge decks where it's Fangry plus 3 other Decepticons that are aggressive, and then the Omega Supremes and Tidal Waves and Fort Maxes of the world where you can do something weird, and it's just and where I'm going with this, to your point, get the redundancy in pips as opposed to the card text. I'm struggling to find where it's like we don't have any green star cards, like you said, so you just don't have the ability to consistently ensure that your deck is going to function in the capacity that you need it to, even by doubling the number of that particular star card via the spotlight, or if it's Beachcomber or Night Tracer, doing it that way.
It's very easy to grok mount it. It always does too.
Right.
Like it's kind of like Zap. Like it always does. Like the situation is very similar. Like I don't know that the other one. It's very hard to like be like this always does. I mean, I guess Leap of Faith two cards. Like, like it's when they're very obvious like that, it's simple. Like, but like, yes, Bolt of Lightning always does 3 damage, but it doesn't always show up and do it doesn't always do 3 damage, because if you flip it, it does nothing.
Exactly.
Like literally nothing. So that's the problem.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do, and again, I anticipate one of these has to be good. And like you said, the Villainous Spotlight has my vote for at least being one of the options, simply because pick your 4 best or 3 best aggressive options and jam in mounted missiles, call it a day. The Autobot one's going to take more thinking. The other one's up for debate, but
I don't know. Heroic Resolve is pretty nuts. So
yeah,
but all the secret action cards don't care about Autobots right now. I think all the secret action based cards are. Well, no, I just did an article on this, so I think they are all. Weren't they all? Oh, except for Mirage. Except for Mirage, they were all Decepticons.
Right. So you're going to have to jump through some extra hoops. I mean, we still have some cards to go, but not many characters, which is going to be the real defining moment for the Autobot Spotlight.
It would shock me at this point if there were not star card secret actions we haven't seen yet, because there's 2 stratagems that look at like star card potential secret actions in some way, like the one that definitely looks at them and the other one that can look at them. Like, I'd be shocked if we didn't get them, because we haven't got a lot of star card. The only star card we've seen is the 1 star card secret action, right?
Yes.
And the stratagems, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so here's the last question I'll ask you. Do any of these make your Lucky Dodge deck work, Scott?
I mean, it goes in the safeguard deck along with the Optimus.
There it is. Obviously. It's all over. It's all over but the crying, I guess, for that deck anyway. So any other thoughts on the star cards, the star card stratagems, or anything else you want to throw in here, Scott?
No, I just think for people that are looking, I think, and I don't know that anybody hasn't done this, but basically you're just trying to jam more doubles in your deck, and I think that's the way to go. Right.
I think that's what it's going to boil down to, pending these ones you're talking about that we're probably going to see. Because I agree with you, we have an abnormally low number of star cards and reveals so far, so I'm sure we'll see some.
Yep, agreed.
So, well, that'll do it for us, folks. A longer one, but there was a lot of important news that had to get covered, as well as the reveals. So, well, everybody out there, stay safe and healthy. We're going to keep trying to bring you as much content as we can, either through, obviously, other tech talks, but other media as well, to try and give everybody a little bit of an escape.
If we could go into the offices, we would print out proxies, but we can't, so you get to get our ghetto proxies that we're going to use. So.
I'm going to have to try to find a way to print, because I won't be able to read the cards if I write them, so, and I'll never remember the texts, but anyway. Yeah. So, everybody out there, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.